My name is Matt Ryan. I am Mr. ADHD Games. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Megan, so much for being here. We've actually, this is the last day of the month, and we set our subscriber goal for 25 people, and we were at 24 when we started. We're actually up to 29 now. So we blitzed that goal. That goal is blown out of the water. So big props. Thank you so much for being here. You are a huge part of that. But I will let you do a small introduction of yourself before I start grilling you with questions.
Um, okay, I'm looking at what you put up there. So hi, I'm Megan. I currently live in an area called Big Canoe, Georgia. My fiance and I moved here about a month and a half ago at this point. He proposed after that, so we were roommates before we were fiancés. So I live with a weird Auburn roommate fan. So I left my job at a software company back in June to become a full-time boudoir photographer. I have a photography degree. I Matt has gluten-free foodie, and I am drinking gluten-free beer like right now. Yeah, I have a dog, a cat. I love Christmas. We have two trees up, and I'm a knitter. So there you
Oh,
go.
that's a great introduction. That's a super awesome introduction. So a lot of the things that I want to talk about um, focus around a lot of things about you because we've been friends for so long. So I know a ton about you. And so I was like, what are some good, interesting questions I can ask to kind of dig in to just how it feels to, first of all, be diagnosed with ADHD so late, and then on top of that, also be a woman with ADHD, the most underdiagnosed like group. Is It's really mind blowing. So I want to kind of tackle those things. And of course, we'll pepper in some other stories and funny things because we've had plenty of those as well. But
Feel
for
free to ask me what Whitney was wearing the day I met y'all,
uh,
because I know.
weren't you wearing like a blue top and she was wearing like a red top?
I was wearing a red dress, she was wearing a yellow dress, and there was a sandwich.
Ah, there you go. Yes, so Megan is also best friends with my wife. So, but the first thing I want to ask you is focusing kind of around the late diagnosis. So, when were you
Mhm.
diagnosed? Tell me a little bit about that.
So I'm 34 years old. I was diagnosed when I was 33, like on the cusp of turning 34. It was like a month before. Uh, so it was right there.
No,
It's just
that's
in the last year.
yeah. So, what drove you to get the diagnosis? Was it something that you had seen on like you like seen
So
information about, and you're like, that's me, or somebody had mentioned to you, or your doctor had said something?
yeah, so it's kind of an interesting thing. I was still working for a software company at the time, and we went completely remote, and it just blew my brain out of the water. Like I was having a really hard time. And of course, 2020 is happening, and so I reached out to my friend was like, I think you need medicine. And I was like, I'm fine. I'll just, you know, turn on some Christmas lights. And she was like, maybe you should talk to your doctor. And so I went to my doctor and was like, hey, so here are the things. And he was like, yeah, you definitely are struggling with seasonal affective disorder, and prescribed me Wellbutrin. And I went back after, like seasons changed, and I was like, hey, can I like taper down? Like, I think I'm good now. And my work changed as I started to taper off of it. And I was like talking to my friend about it, and I was like, is that like a normal thing? Because she's been on medicine. And she was like, well, I don't understand why you would come off of it. Like, what are they doing with your ADHD medicine? And I was like, what ADHD medicine? And she was like, you're, aren't you ADHD? And I was like, what? And she was like, come on, Megan, like, are you kidding? And she sat there and pointed out like five coping mechanisms in like 30 seconds. And then she sent me a YouTube video, and she was like, I think you need to watch this. And shortly after that, I called a psychiatrist and got onboarded and got a diagnosis and got medicated.
How has it been since then? Have
Oh my
what's
God,
changed
so
since
good.
then?
So I had a lot of factors happening. One was my job caused a high amount of anxiety, a like ridiculously high amount of anxiety. So instead of I had been tapering down my Wellbutrin, the psych immediately quadrupled it. She was like, no, 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 no. If you were on that and if you experienced a difference, we need to see if like upping the dose will actually work for you. So I got really fortunate in that the first medication that I was prescribed actually worked for me, and that's not a stimulant. Like that's amazing. Um, so it has, I can tell when I can actually like sing like I can get my brain to like stack things up. Normally everything's just floating around, and with the Wellbutrin it's like, no, no, here's an order, they can be neat and tidy, and I can go, okay, I gotta do this one first. um it's not perfect by any means. Like I still have all, like my desk right now is like
Oh yeah,
living
post-it
proof. Like
notes.
it's,
I
yeah,
always, if you don't
like
have a
it's,
stack of post-it notes near your desk, you're doing something wrong. Like you have to keep them nearby. That's how my thoughts are post-it notes.
so yeah, and it's like, so I feel like I can control the chaos. Like I can't, or I can deal within the chaos. Like I can't. I'm not as chaotic as the chaos. Like I like the chaos can happen, and I can go, okay, I'm gonna do this within the chaos. It's kind of what the medicine, the Wellbutrin, does for me. I was dosed anxiety medicine as well because of the anxiety I was experiencing with my job, and my fiance is my biggest supporter and partner in everything I do. And partway through the summer, we started house shopping, and he was like, we need to get you out of the city. We need to get you out of your job. Like, you need to be in a better physical location for your mental health. And we moved to the mountains. Like right out, like we're like an hour and 20 minutes from where we lived. We're in a mountain development. It takes us 10 minutes to get down the mountain to get like out places. And I've dropped from 3 doses of anxiety medicine, and like it's been a magical.
That's so awesome. That's really,
Yeah.
really, that's so great to hear because I know that a lot of times finding medication can be a journey, especially for people with ADHD because, like you said, sometimes it gets misdiagnosed. Like a lot of times, like for me, it was a big thing was like they kept putting me on more anxiety and antidepressant medicine and they just kept dumping
Mm,
it. And I was so reluctant to admit that like, hey, I have ADHD. Maybe it's that. Like I didn't want to tell anybody, so I just kept letting them dump that on me, and try different things, and it wasn't working, and they couldn't figure out why. And it kind of became obvious to me over the last like 6 months, like why it wasn't working because I was trying to
mm,
treat something different, something wrong. Um,
dude.
so at 34, obviously you spent a lot of time flying under the radar. And I like to, I mean, obviously, you can speak to it a little better than I can. But when I think about these kind of things, I think about a lot of things that happen with women with ADHD. So you have these like stereotypical things that people place on women, like ditzy blondes.
Mm,
Women are bad drivers. Like these like terrible stereotypes that like, I mean, everybody hears about women, but when you look at the statistics of diagnosed and treated ADHD in males versus females, these things that have come out as like these stereotypes in my mind could very well have just been undiagnosed women with ADHD, not necessarily based on anything their hair color or that they are. Yeah, so lay it on me. What do you feel about that?
show me a grown woman with ADHD, and I will show you a elementary school child who got talkative put on her report card, because hyperactivity doesn't show up the same way in women that it does in men or females versus males. If you go back down to young children, the majority of the research is done on young boys. And you think ADHD, you think a kid running around a classroom or running around outside, stuff like that. That hyperactivity for females tends to show up mentally, and it comes out in the way we talk. So we'll just like da 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 da. And if you think of all the talkative young girls there are, a lot of times that is a symptom of the hyperactive ADHD, and then the inattentive is that social butterfly. We're going place to place, like we're doing all of these different things. I remember so vividly, I had school friends, church friends. I had at school, I would have six different groups of friends, and I would just between all of them. And it was just me getting those attention hits, like those little dopamine
Yeah,
hits. And
the
so,
dopamine pumps. Yeah.
yeah, those things. So where that kind of like went into adulthood, I worked retail for a really long time, and that was, I think, one of the reasons I flew under the radar for so long is because I was on my feet moving around, and it was expected of me to go from customer to customer to customer, and it was perfect. And people would be like, "Oh my gosh, are you not exhausted at the end of the day?" I'm like, "No, this is great. I love it. I'm energized." And it's because I was feeding into those things that I chemically needed. And looking back now, of course, like hindsight's 2020. I at one point was like, I want to move into the business stream of this. And so I ended up at a desk, and I ended up in a room, and like it was awful. And I ended up leaving the job after that, and I was like, I'm gonna go into this other job. And I started working for a software company. A lot of my job was to travel and to go to trade shows and to talk to the software users and to be in the community. And that part of my job was amazing. In the office, um, I didn't realize I was coping, but I would take my knitting into meetings with me and be like, "Hey, I do this because like I need to fidget and I'll be able to pay attention a lot better. Is it offensive? Can I do this?" And I would just ask the person leading the meeting. Most of them were super cool with it because I worked for a super cool company. I also had like daily triggers that I would go for walks. Like I would go outside and I played I played Pokemon Go, and I'd come back in. But I took those breaks 3 times a day. I had a morning, my lunch, and my afternoon, and I was like, I was leaving. Um, and so now look, Anne would say, like, isn't that why you knit? My friend who was kind enough to speak truth to me and not be nervous and scared, and try to, you know, tiptoe around it. She was like, "Girl, you're ADHD." She was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I figured that's why you like moved around the office and you never worked at your desk. You would work at like the couch and then the chair over there, and then you would go work at somebody else's like desk across from them, and then you would go play Pokemon, and then you would come back, and then you would go there, and you like took your knitting to every like that makes sense." And so I see now all the ways that I was getting these outlets while trying to maintain this like super professional outlook, but feeling like I was always failing. I always felt like I was failing. If I was in the office and not like out at a trade show, I felt like I was terrible at my job. Um, and so coming to terms with that, there's a lot of things that, as someone who my brain is constantly in a go, um, it can feel like if I'm not doing that, then I'm failing. And so there's it kind of combining that with the modern day hustle mentality. I'm wondering how many of these like girl boss hustlers are ADHD and they don't know it, and that's their coping mechanism, and they don't realize that they could be working in a more structured way and getting enough sleep at night, and instead of forcing themselves into these non-healthy patterns. I feel like I have gone 15 different places with my comment.
No, 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 no. That's perfect too because I think that there's a lot of professions that are just more stressful in general that kind of speak to you see a lot more females in those sort of professions, like not to generalize, but like nursing and daycare and these things where there's just pure chaos around you all the time and
Mhm.
there's so much going on. That's how our mind does best and how we get our dopamine hits is those different stimulants, and even feeling anxiety gives us the dopamine hit. It's a bad one, but it
Mhm.
still satisfies. And so I think that the women boss hustlers who are working those many hours and these nurses who put in just a ridiculous amount of time, they almost have to be ADHD or they would break down. Like they wouldn't be able to handle it. Um, we're resilient people, that's for sure. We've kind of built it's out of obligation, which sucks, but we have become very resilient. And I also like what you said is that you, not even knowing you had ADHD, found ways to build accommodations for yourself in the workplace. And luckily, you were in a workplace that was flexible enough to let you do that. Oh, Haley, thank you so much for the sub. We're so glad to have you here. Um,
Oh, it was gifted to her.
oh, nice. Oh, Tessa gifted Haley a sub. It's so awesome. I love that people are gifting subs now. But yeah, I think that it's one of those things where you built accommodations and you hit in a workplace that allowed you to build these accommodations. And a lot of times people with ADHD end up in a workplace situation where they're in the same professional environment, where they're in an office situation and maybe can't build
Hmm.
accommodations around themselves and they just push through the anxiety and the depression and end up, I mean, I
Burnt
like
out,
yeah,
just
exactly.
destroyed.
You get
Yeah.
home from work and you have no energy. You don't the people that you want to spend time with when you get home, you just don't have the energy to even do it because of how much you exert yourself to do these things that you watch other people do with ease. And I think that's
Well,
something that gets me is watching the other people do them with ease.
but the thing is, we can do things with ease. We just need a different structure. And one of the things with that is like the Pomodoro method.
Hmm.
Come at me with the Pomodoro method. That is absolute crap. Work for 25 minutes, take a 5 minute break. 20 minutes in, I'm just figuring out what work to do. If you try to stop me for a break 5 minutes later, it's game over. So instead of like, these traditional meetings where like we're going to have a 30-minute meeting that we're going to do that, I mean, like, okay, cool, but like if you want me to brainstorm, you need to give me 3 hours and a whiteboard. like and I think being able to be honest and say, I can do this, but I'm going to do it in a different way. Like, here, okay, they're like, here's the spreadsheet, fill out your marketing structure for the week. And I'm like, I need like two whiteboards and some tunes. Like, I can't put it in a spreadsheet. I have to do it this way first. I can then take the information and do that, but like, I can't just go straight to here. And so being aware that we have these different, we may take a different path to get to an end result, or we may need a partner who can, like, I have to do it this way, but then this person on my team can take what I've done and turn it into what it needs to be, like that type of accommodation. And I think it's just that honesty of like, we need routine, and we don't like it. We hate routine, but we create them anyway. And so when those routines get broken up, when something changes at the office, when we have a set meeting that all of a sudden disappears, there are these triggers and habits that we've created that then disappear as well. And so I think just being aware of that in and of yourself. And the best example I have is the last 2 months of my life. I went from living in an apartment to we bought this house. This house is an hour away. It had contract. We needed like work to do on it before we can move in. And so there were days where my fiance would call and say, "Hey, can you be at the house tomorrow morning for the contractor?" I would have to leave my house at 7:30 to be up here. And so instead of waking up, walking the dog, making my coffee, sitting and doing my brain dump, deciding what I was going to wear that day, I was getting up, getting the dog, getting in the car, and it threw everything. And it did it enough that I was like, I'm breaking it down and I don't know why. And I finally figured out what it like I was completely out of my structure. And so if we can identify that, okay, these are things that I cling to, if this is going to go away, I know I need to put something in its place. I need to be aware and make that substitution, because if it just poof goes away and I don't do anything, like, I'm going to crumble. And I think that knowing these things about ourselves, like, we can do things, we just have to do it different, and we need to understand how we do it and then get support ourselves through that.
Yeah, that's
People are
awesome.
saying yes, they agree.
Yeah, yes. Um, so I'm gonna push back on you on the Pomodoro method though, because I think it's brilliant. And I'll give it to you that like it's set in its 20 minutes of work, 5 minutes of off isn't brilliant. But the idea of a set amount of time that you say I'm going to work on this for this amount of time gives my brain a deadline. Even if I'm like I'm going to work for an hour and then take a break for 10 minutes or take a 15-minute break. If I know the end of that hour is coming, then I have a deadline in my head and it gives me the dopamine to be able to focus on finishing it. Usually not until the last 15 minutes of the time I've given myself, but I do eventually focus on it. It's usually great and everything's fine. But I've found
But
that
that doesn't
altering
do
it
it for you.
yeah, I found that altering it's important.
What?
And I've also found, here's an interesting thing about the Pomodoro method, using it on the other end of things. So we hyper focus on a lot of stuff and we can get obsessed into something and just like say, okay, I'm going to do this and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. You buy all the stuff for it, you do all the research for it, and then you get ready to start and you're just like, eh. Um, but if you do Pomodoro method when you're hyper focusing into things and remind yourself that even if you're enjoying and able to focus, reminding yourself to take a break is
Mm.
great because you won't burn out on things as much. I've found that being able to take that moment of like, okay, I know I'm loving this and I'm having a great time like doing this activity or whatever it is I'm doing at the time and I'm like, but I'm going to do it for like 30 more minutes and then I'm going to take a break just to teach myself the habit of being able to take a break.
I'm impressed with you. I can't do that. I have to have something, a thing. It needs to be, we go for a walk in the afternoon, or it needs to be like, I have to go start dinner. There has to be a thing. Like, I had to stop working because I had to get on the stream with you. Like, that was like, oh, I have to stop working because I have to go eat dinner because I have to, like, I, me saying I'm going to do something for 30 minutes, I'll look up 4 hours later.
Mhm.
It doesn't like doesn't do it.
Well, we perceive time differently. I mean, that's one of the neat things about our
True.
brain. That's like we can do the same task, and it's so irritating. Like every day, like we can drive the same route to work every day. We can and still be late. Like every day, like we can have the same routine in the morning and just be late. And like it's mind blowing because you're like, how? Like I know how long this takes me. Like I know exactly, but you don't. Like your perception's different than what reality is.
I've timed myself doing things to get around this. I was like, okay, what happens if drying my hair? It's drying my hair is like the thing. I will put it off and put it off and put it off until all of a sudden my hair is air dried and it looks like yeah. So if I'm like, okay, well, I need to wash my hair before I go somewhere, like I need to know how long it takes me to dry my hair. And there's drying my hair when it's a focused task, and there's drying my hair while scrolling Instagram and texting and listening to a voice message. And I'm like, oh, drying my hair takes 7 minutes when I focus. Drying my hair takes 27 when I do it this way. And so I now know that, like, no, the phone has to go in the other room if I need a 7 minute hair dry. And so I had to time myself on things that I was like, I think that's where I'm breaking down. Drying my hair was definitely one of the things where I was breaking down on getting to work on time. Because I'd be like, oh, it's super short. Well, no, it's not super short. You're dicking around.
Yeah, exactly. Like I totally know that feeling. Like I can shower in like be showered and ready to go 8 minutes, like 8 to 10 minutes. Good. But there's those days where it's like takes me 35 minutes to get like showered and dressed. Like it does, and it's just Um,
Um,
somebody in chat says, as a photographer, I find it super difficult to actually start projects, especially when I see all the images I have to edit, even though I know I love what I do. Do you encounter stuff like that? Those kind of feelings?
yes. So I set up my client structure to counter it. Like legitimately, I hate editing. And like I love the photos, but like something about looking back at what I did and having to fix and correct it is like, so I do same day reveals with my clients. I actually do the photo shoot and I send them to a 90-minute lunch. So this is like like you said, giving yourself that thing at the end. I give them a gift card, they go to lunch. I have to have their photos edited, culled, edited, and album designed by the time they get back, which means we go through their photos, they select, I'm done. Like my album design is done. I just export it and send it. My editing is done. I export the photos, put it into the transfer to send it. Like my clients get their images the same day, because if they don't get them the same day, they're not getting them for 4 months. Like,
Yeah, unless you're gonna do
like
them because you're putting off something else you don't want to do more, and then you're like, I'll edit photos today because I don't want to do this other thing. That's how I always end up finding those things getting completed is only like, okay, there's something I dread more than this, so I'll do this for right now. Um,
uh,
Chad is
I will
super
say
super impressed with your workflow of your
it's
photos start to finish and your speed.
software. Get your, like, honestly, it's been finding tools. I use, I'll call in Lightroom. I only show them between, I've given myself a limit. I show between 60 and 70 photos. That's it. Um, I've got presets ready to go. So I hit presets on it. I shoot in a studio. So the lighting situation is the same 90% of the time. So I can trust that preset. My album design has a smart design, and then I just rearrange, like I tell it to go in a particular order, and I just make sure that I like the story tells, and I'll fix the layouts and things like that. But like setting up my workflow to accommodate the areas where I will procrastinate and drag my feet to not allow it to happen has been the best thing that I could do. The worst part is then when everything arrives and I have to ship it back out, because I hate shipping.
Hmm.
I have not found a solution to that yet. Stuff sits in a box. If anybody has any ideas there, I'd love them.
You could recruit your husband, your fiance. Sorry, not husband yet. Your fiance.
I mean, um, boudoir photography. That's the downside. Is like, here's this 20 by 30 medal of somebody else's butt. Like, eh, I don't think the clients would like it.
I mean, yeah. So, how did you? I mean, obviously you had a passion for photography. How did you go? I know that you did regular photography, and now you're transitioning kind of your accounts and things into the boudoir section of things. That's kind of your big focus now. Tell me a little bit about that. What inspired that?
I made that shift in 2019. The funny story is that I was at a photo conference and I was at an open bar event drinking with two really successful photographers. And I was managing them as affiliates for the software company that I worked for. And they found out that I have a photography degree and drunkenly, like, what do you mean you don't shoot anymore? And badgered me into getting back to it. But so that's how it kind of happened. But I knew that I didn't have the patience for families. I have zero desire to ever photograph a wedding again. I did it. It was miserable. I hated it. Um, and I have some personal experiences where I really became disconnected from my body, and I didn't respect myself, and I had to regain all of those things and regain a love for my body and get out of a perpetual cycle of trying to diet and all of these things. And I realized that I could create an experience where a woman can come in and have a full experience. Like, we go hair, makeup, photo shoot, lunch. She sees herself. There's no delay for, oh my gosh, what if my cellulite looked really bad? Or, oh my gosh, what if my forehead wrinkle did this, that, or the other, So I was like, if I can be really intentional and create an experience that helps build confidence and um, it is healing. And I have found that the people who come to me when we're doing our phone consultation, if I find out that they have a history of trauma with their body, they're my client. Like, we connect in that way. The space that I've created is I've been very intentional in creating a safe space where we if we need to pause because you get triggered by something, we're going to pause. We're going to talk about it ahead of time. And I'm going to know, like, if you know this, or this can send me down a bad direction, like, I'm not going to do those things. I am going to ask before I touch. I fully believe in consent. You're only going to disrobe as far as you're comfortable. And if that means that you're in a sweater and a dress and you never disrobe beyond that, like, that's about what you feel empowered and comfortable in. And we've been sexualized in media, but then demonized when we do embrace our sensuality. And I think that creating a space where we can go, oh, I can do this, and it doesn't make me a bad person, and it does feel good, and I don't have to judge myself, and there's no guilt with it. Like, it's just something that women don't have that in a lot of places. And it's been, I never want to do anything else. Like, I love it.
No, your passion shines through. It absolutely. Just even hearing you talk about it, absolutely. We got some comments from chat. Tessa said you guys should totally collab on something, a project
But
sometime, because they also do things. And then Lister said that you got to get your fiance to do a boudoir session. So I think that that's a request from chat. Is that a
we
boudoir session
we
happen?
we tried to do a dog war session with
A
my dog.
dog war, okay, with Jasper. Oh man, that's a big boy. It's a big boy to put into
It
some lingerie.
didn't go well. It didn't go
He didn't like the lingerie. It's
well.
okay.
He didn't like it. He didn't. No, that was not. He didn't like it.
It's
We
okay.
thought
It's
it'd be.
not for everybody. It's not for everybody, you know. Um,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I always like to
There's.
close out with kind of a like silly, like goofy-ish question. And for you, I kind of cooked up an interesting one. Um, if you had to choose a name that you would be called if you attended Hogwarts, what would your Hogwarts name be? Yeah, it's silly, but it also makes you think.
It's so. That's such a big decision.
I know. What would
I'm.
your Hogwarts name be? It has to be something like, because none of those kids have like normal names. It's not like Tim Smith is not like at Hogwarts. Sorry, Tim Smith, if you are, but
Okay, for everyone,
and
I
people want to know what your
actually am
Hogwarts house is
Gryffindor.
as well. So
Every quiz I've ever taken, I'm fully Gryffindor.
Gryffindor, okay.
Yeah, definitely not Ravenclaw. Let's just say that. Um, my sister's a Hufflepuff, a hard Hufflepuff. Um, if you like, I'm gonna say this: if you like Harry Potter, you need to go on Amazon Prime and you need to find the Puffs play. It's a stage play. It's recording. It used to be off Broadway. It is amazing. Like the Puffs is it is 7 years at Hogwarts from the perspective of the Hufflepuffs, and it is. I saw it 3 times on stage. I also and then they recorded it, and you can get it and watch it, and it's super good. But
I'm Slytherin, by the way.
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, kind of
I, I'm not
Slytherin.
surprised.
This guy.
Yeah.
All right, Hogwarts name. What do you got? It's got to be fun.
Chantilly Hermione.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Well, now it's on. It's officially on record. We have it here.
Like lemon, but not lemon, like lemony. But they're
Lim-
British, so they wouldn't say lemon. I like Chantilly lemon, something with lemon.
okay,
Something with lemon.
I like that. That is a cool one. I like that one a lot. Well, Megan, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. Um,
If anybody wants to connect, Instagram is the best place to find me.
yeah, I was actually just getting ready to let you plug yourself and just say,
Oh,
hey, this is where you can find me. This is where you can check me out. This is my at whatever, and then we'll also make sure we get it posted and tagged in the video clip when I post it to YouTube. But lay it on
cool.
us.
Yeah, Instagram. That's the best
Instagram it
place.
is. Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, it is at Embodied Soul Boudoir. There is also an embodied soul photography in the most ADHD thing ever. I deleted the password to that account and can't recover it. No matter what I've done, I've tried for 5 months. I just started a new one. Uh, so, yeah.
That's okay. No, I absolutely like that's one
Like
of the
ADHD
things.
meets Mercury retrograde, and the password is gone forever, and
Yeah,
I can't.
this
Like,
is a place
yeah.
you can say things like that, and things like that can happen, and we can lose torches for no reason, and there's zero judgment here because that's the thing that
Someone,
most of the
yeah.
people here either love somebody who behaves like that or behaves like
Yeah.
that themselves. So, zero
And it's
judgment
my
here.
fault. I deleted it. Like that's the best part is I thought it was a different password and I deleted it. So embodied soul boudoir. My personal is Meg Huddles. If anybody wants to not see boudoir but still wants to connect, I totally get it. That's totally fine. If that type of imagery is not your thing or triggering, Meg Huddles is where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, sounds great. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to take a little break and we will be back probably in like 10 or 15 minutes to play some more games. But thank you everyone for being with us.
Bye.